Hi friends, my name is Brittany from Brittany Loves Reading, and today I'm giving you my R Fantasy TBR. Every year from April right through the end of March the following year, R Fantasy and the R Fantasy Bingo Board happens. I have never done the R Fantasy Bingo Board. There's a couple reasons for this. One, when I was reading a ton of sci-fi and fantasy, I didn't know this was a thing. Two, once I knew this was a thing, I was in my romance era. I was reading all the romance books and not reading the fantasy books. But this year, we are in the perfect alignment of things. The R Fantasy Board has just been announced. I am in my sci-fi fantasy era. Everything has come together for this moment of me giving you my R Fantasy Bingo Board TBR. For this TBR, I am not going to be giving synopses. This is already going to take a while because there are 25 prompts. So we're not going to go into synopses. We're not going to do that. But I have filled every single prompt except one. So we're going to go into what I'm going to be doing. These are subject to change, but in theory, this is my plan. So let's dive in to the first line of the bingo board. The first prompt and the first line is to start a series. For this prompt, my plan is to read The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. This is the first book in the Lacania series. I may have said the trilogy wrong, but we're going to just go with it. I got the second book in this series in a little free library, so I've been meaning to start it to see if I want to read the book I got in the little free library and also pick up the subsequent books. So I have this one from the library. I may read it while I have it borrowed this time. I may have to give it back and re-borrow it, but this will be the series that I'm reading the first book of. Then we needed an alliterative title, and for that I'm going to read 1,000 Recipes for Revenge by Beth Cato. This book I have on my Kindle. I think I got it as an Amazon Reads first, but do not quote me on that. I never really know where my Kindle books come from. Sometimes they're on Kindle sales, sometimes they're Stuff Your Kindle, sometimes they're Amazon Reads first, and they all just kind of land there, and I forget that I own them. So for this, I did go kind of looking at my Kindle to see if I could get a few Kindle books on this TBR, just because I need to start focusing on my Kindle TBR. It's getting a bit out of hand. I do love books around baking and cooking, and this has culinary magic, which sounds right up my street, and also the two R's, revenge and recipes, make it alliterative. Then we had the prompt of Under the Surface, where you needed a book where the majority of the book or a good part of the book was set underground or under the water. For this, I'm going to be going with The Hanging City by Charlie N. Holmberg. This is about a goblin or troll society that lives under a bridge over a deep cavern. So frankly, the city is under a bridge inside a cavern that there's no bottom of. So that's under the earth. Don't you think? The cavern clearly goes under the earth and it's under a bridge. So I think this works for this prompt. This is also one that I have on Kindle. Again, I think from an Amazon Reads first. And a few of my friends have read this and really enjoyed it. This idea of this hanging troll city sounds so intriguing and interesting to me. And it's unlike something I really have read before. Then we had Criminal, which is to read a book with a main character that is a criminal. And for that, I'm going to be using The Dragon Path by Daniel Abrams. This has 3 main characters and we follow 3 main perspectives. So I figured as long as one of them was a criminal, that works. And one of them is a smuggler. That is a criminal in my book. You are smuggling things. You could go to jail for that. You are a criminal. So that is what I'm going to go with. This book, other than the fact that one of them is a smuggler, tells me I know no other things. I got this at a used bookstore. Dragons, that's how it became on my TBR, and now it's on this TBR. For the prompt of dreams, we have to read a book with a character or somehow in the book that our characters experience dreams, magical or not. For this, I'm going to put the second in a series, which is The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. This book is the second book in the Raven Boy series, which I'm actually starting this month in April as a read-along with Julie from Keep Calm with Books and Coffee. I will put all the information to that read-along down below. So I know I'm already reading this series. I know the second one has dreams. So done, dusted, perfect. This was an easy fill for me. Now, starting off with our second row of the bingo board, we have Entitled Animals, which is a book that has a title with an animal in it, and mythical animals do count, which is what I am using this prompt for. You have seen this go on multiple TBRs. If I do not read this sometime in this calendar year, someone needs to come for me. I need to read this book. It just keeps getting pushed off for no reason other than I run out of time. And I need to stop running out of time. I need to finally read To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monoquill Blackgoose. I need to read this book. It is a dragon school. It's written by a First Nations author. It is such an intriguing premise, and I keep putting it on TBRs and not getting to it. So, like, literally, someone needs to come for me if this doesn't get read in this calendar year. This is the one prompt that I'm not actually sure the book I picked works. I Googled fantasy books with bards in it, and this was on a list on Goodreads that said it did. If it doesn't, please let me know in the comments and I will switch it out. And also a recommendation for it if you tell me it doesn't fit, because this one I definitely struggled with. So this is The Bard. Obviously, I need a fantasy book with a bard in it. And for this one, I tentatively have Blood of the Elves, which is the first book in the Witcher series. Again, I'm not 100% convinced this works. So please correct me in the comments if it doesn't. I will 100% believe you. For prologues and epilogues, we obviously need a book with a prologue or an epilogue in it. For this one, I went with a book with an epilogue in it, and I decided to go with After the Forest by Kel Woods. This is a Hansel and Gretel retelling, following Hansel and Gretel after the experience they had in the woods with the witch that you know of as the original Hansel and Gretel story. I recently picked this up from the library. I actually hadn't heard of it until I picked this up, but the cover got me, and obviously retelling got me because I love a retelling. So this one I had borrowed already, and I really wanted to get to it fairly soon, so it kind of worked out perfectly. And I wanted to make sure to get a couple of retellings on this list because I feel like I haven't read that many retellings this year. For self-pub or indie pubbed author or book, I decided to go with Murder at Spindle Manor by Morgan Stagg. This book was part of Spitbo this year, and as soon as I saw the cover and read the synopsis, I knew this was a me book. It sounded so perfect, and I immediately put it on my Kindle and have not read it yet. So now's the time to pick it up because I really do think I'm gonna love this book. For the romantasy prompt, I'm going to stick with my retellings. I'm going to read a retelling that everyone has told me I need to read and I think I'm going to love. It is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It is Why Choose? There's a lot of great things happening in this book, and it is Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. I have heard great things about this book from a few of my friends, and a lot of people think I'm going to love this because Beauty and the Beast, Why Choose? There's Fae. Lots of things that I love are happening in this book. The tagline says 4 beastly princes and 1 awkward bookworm. An enchanted world of fae, magic, and danger. I needed no other information. So for Dark Academia, I actually had a lot of options for this one, but I really just wanted to go with a recent release that I am sad I haven't gotten to yet. And that is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. This is the sequel, companion to A Dowry of Blood. It is super dark academia, super lyrical writing, and it follows the vampire Camilla. All of these things make me think I'm going to love this book. I've heard mixed reviews, and honestly, I'm a bit concerned both ways. Because there are people that I normally line up with Dark Academia who didn't love this, but also people who I normally line up with in Dark Academia who did love this. It seems to go both ways. I don't know which way I'm going to fall, but I need to get this off my TBR. I have this on Kindle because I did get the NetGalley arc for it. So at some point this year, I will be reading An Education in Malice. For the prompt of multiple POV, I've decided to go with The Atlas Complex by Olivia Blake. I'm really nervous for how this ends, so I've been putting it off, but I really do need to get to this. I really enjoyed the first book, but the second book was just okay for me and really seemed to have middle book syndrome. But since I haven't read the third book, I don't know if that's true. We're gonna find out if it's just middle book syndrome or if the first book is the best book in the series. I'm crossing my fingers that I love the rest of this and then can say I loved the series. For published in 2024, I'm going to go with The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This is probably my most anticipated release of 2024, especially looking at fantasy. I adore Ninth House and Hellbent, and I have very high hopes for this standalone fantasy novel. For character with a disability, I'm going to go with another very anticipated release for me for 2024, and that was Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. I adored Godkiller when I read it a couple of months ago, and I am very excited to dive into this sequel. The character that I'm thinking of is Kissin. Kissin is an amputee and has a physical disability, so that is the character that I'm using We follow multiple characters in this book, but that is definitely the one that made this fit the prompt. Now, when I first read this prompt of published in the 1990s, I immediately had some concern of did I have any books that I wanted to read that were published that long ago? And then I remembered I'm currently in the middle of reading Wheel of Time. So I double checked, and the next Wheel of Time I have to read, The Shadow Rising, was published in 1993. So that is perfect. I will be continuing the Wheel of Time all year, so this will definitely get read. It will probably get read in May. So check, perfect, Wheel of Time on the TBR. Moving on to our fourth row with Orcs, Trolls, Goblins, oh my, you have to read a book with one of these characters in the book. This is where Stuff Your Kindle Day books definitely came in handy. I had multiple orc books to choose from. I've decided to go with Orc Tested by Caddy Austin. I know nothing about this. I got it for Stuff Your Kindle Day. I picked my Stuff Your Kindle Day books off cover and title. That is what I know. But it clearly has an orc in it, so perfect, check, prompt filled. For a space opera, I'm actually very glad I'm behind on a current buddy read because had I read it last month like I was supposed to, I would have probably struggled to fill this prompt with books I actually owned. But I'm behind. I did not read this book when I was supposed to, so now it can be my space opera, and that is The Blighted Stars by Maggie O'Keefe. Laura from The Book Hermit is currently doing a read-along of this series, so I will put the information down in the description box below if you want to join us, because I am not the only one behind. So it's very low-key, read as you go, it's happening over on Storygraph. So thankfully, I procrastinated, and it worked out perfectly. For author of color, I'm going to go with the second book in the Legendborn series, Bloodmark by Tracy Deonn. I am so excited to continue with this series. It's a retelling series based around King Arthur, and it's really intricate, this world Tracy Deonn has built. I've heard from multiple people that this is better than the first book, and I liked the first book. So bring it on. Let's see where this is going. I know the next book comes out in 2025, so this is a great time to get to it and see where this series is going before the third release. For the prompt of survival, I'm going to pick up another read-along, one that's going to start later in the year. It's starting in July, and I'm doing it with Nicole from Dusty Book Sniffers, and that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuan. I love R.F. Kuan. I'm very excited to go back and read The Poppy War. And obviously it features survival. There's a war. I feel like I'm doing really well getting a lot of mandatory reads on this TBR. I'm working smarter, not harder this year. For judge a book by its cover, I'm going to go with my most recent cover buy. I went shopping pretty recently for books. Saw this book on the shelf, knew nothing about it at the time. I've heard a bit about it since, but clearly saw the cover and knew it had to come home with me. And that is Where the Dark Stands Still by A.B. Poranek. This cover is gorgeous. Who wouldn't judge a book by this cover? It's beautiful. Also, it's set in like a magical atmospheric woods, and that tends to work for me. So I think I'm going to like this book. But other than the fact that it has a pretty cover and it's clearly set in a magical woods, that is the end of my knowledge about it, so it was perfect for this prompt. We made it to the last row of the bingo board, row number 5. The first prompt for this is set in a small town, and I've decided to go with Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Emily goes to a small town to study the fairies, so therefore it's set in a small town, I'm pretty sure. That's what I got from the synopsis. This is another book I've had lots of FOMO about, and I've been wanting to get to this, especially since the second book came out, because a ton of people that I know read the first book when the second came out, and it made me have all the FOMO. I feel like BookTube is just constantly having FOMO around what your friends are reading. So for this prompt, I need you to do your thing down in the comments. This is the one prompt I did not fill. It is the 5 SFF short stories. I'm not a big short stories reader, so I never really have a lot of short stories on my TBR, and I need to know which ones are good and which ones I should be picking up. So please leave me some recommendations down below for this prompt. Also, I feel like this will help a lot of people who are also doing the bingo to find some good short stories, because I feel like I'm not alone in not knowing what short stories to grab. For Eldritch Creatures, I'm going to go with Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. I think this counts because it even mentions Eldritch relics on the back of the book. I do realize I did not have to go that literal with this prompt, but I wanted to read this book this year anyway, and I feel like it works. So here we are. For reference material, I decided to go with a book with a map, and I'm deciding to read Threadneedle by Carly Thomas. This cover is everything. This cover is so beautiful. This has magical shops, a secret library where librarians feed off words, and clubs where revelers lose themselves in a haze of spells. All of these things, especially the magical librarians, really were a reason this got on my TBR. And the last prompt is book club or read along, and that is to do a past book choice for a Our Fantasy book club or read along. I went looking through the list and I decided to do The Darkness Outside Us. Lately, a couple of people in my Patreon are reading this, and when people found out they were reading this, they started talking about how amazing it was. And it had been on my TBR, but that definitely rocketed it up my TBR. It's sci-fi fantasy. I'm currently in my sci-fi era, so this is perfect. This is now definitely the book club and read along I will be doing. But that is the end of my TBR for the bingo board. Let me know if you can help me out with those couple of questions that I had as we went through the video. If there's another one that you saw that you're like, Brittany, no, that doesn't work, you're wrong, let me know about that too, because that's very possible that may be true. I do my best, but half these books I only know very little about because I haven't read them yet, obviously. Are you participating in Our Fantasy Bingo? Let me know down below. Since this is my first year, let me know if it's your first year too, or if you're an old hat at this, if you've done it every year or multiple years. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.